Welcome everyone to Voices of Rizal, a youth podcast series. I am Eric MACASIL.
And I am Herbert. Now, Eric, when it comes to Rizal, what is his quote that immediately crossed your mind?
Oh, okay. I got one. Ang kabataan ang pag-asa ng bayan.
Most of us think of that quote right away. The youth is the hope of the nation. It's on school walls, in speeches, on social media posts every youth month.
But here's the plot twist. Rizal never actually said that.
I know, right? When I first learned this, I felt betrayed. It's like finding out your favorite childhood memory was actually a dream.
But here's the thing. Just because he didn't say those exact words doesn't mean he didn't believe in the power of youth. In fact, what he actually wrote is even more profound.
So let's talk about what Rizal wrote. When he was just 18 years old, practically a kid himself, he wrote this beautiful poem called A la Juventud Filipiniana, which means to the Filipino youth.
And this wasn't just some school assignment. He won first prize in a literary contest for this poem, beating out Spanish writers. So imagine a Filipino teenager outwriting the colonizers in their own language.
The poem is incredibly powerful. He calls the youth the fair hope of my fatherland. Notice, not just hope, but fair hope. There's beauty and promise in that phrase.
Right, Herbert. And he doesn't just throw out an empty compliment. He's specific about what he expects. He writes, "Come now, thou genius grand, and bring down inspiration." He's calling on young Filipinos to use their brilliance and creativity.
But here's what really strikes me. Rizal saw education as the key. Not just any education, but learning that would break the chains of ignorance. He wanted youth to pursue knowledge in the sciences, arts, and literature.
Exactly. This wasn't about being hopeful for hope's sake. Rizal had a blueprint. He believed educated, morally upright youth would become the enlightened citizens who could transform Philippine society.
And we see this throughout his life, right? He didn't just write about youth, he lived it. By his early 20s, he was already studying medicine in Europe, learning multiple languages, and writing novels.
He was the embodiment of his own vision, the youth as active agents of change, not passive recipients of praise.
Okay, so if Rizal never said, ang kabataan ng pag-asa ng bayan, where did it come from?
Honestly, no one knows for sure. It seems to be a later simplification, probably from the mid 20th century, that captured the essence of Rizal's beliefs in a catchy, memorable phrase.
And it worked. Maybe too well. Because now, we have this sanitized, Instagram-ready quote that's lost a lot of the nuance.
That's the danger, isn't it? When we reduce Rizal's vision to just youth equals hope, we miss the conditions he attached to that hope.
Right? Rizal wasn't saying young people are automatically the solution just by existing. He was saying they could be both if they pursue education, develop their character, and actively work for the nation's progress.
It's the difference between a participation trophy and earning a medal. Rizal expected young Filipinos to put in the work.
And there's something else we lose with the misquote. Rizal's emphasis on moral character in his other writings, especially in his letters and essays, he constantly stressed the importance of integrity, selflessness, and love of country.
He witnessed so much corruption and abuse of power during Spanish colonial rule. For him, having educated youth wasn't enough, and if they just become part of the same corrupt system.
So his vision was holistic, intellectual development, and moral formation.
You know what's interesting? Whether Rizal said it or not, this praise, this praise has become a massive cultural burden.
Oh, absolutely. Think about it. Every generation of Filipino youth grows up being told they are the pag-asa ng bayan. That's a lot of pressure.
And it can go two ways, right? Either it's incredibly inspiring or it's crushing. Because what happens when you feel like you're failing to live up to being the nation's hope?
Especially when the systems around you, education, job opportunities, government support, aren't giving you the tools to actually be that hope.
This is why understanding Rizal's actual vision matters. He wasn't putting all the responsibility on youth alone. He was part of a broader reform movement. He believed in a systemic change, in challenging unjust institutions.
The youth were one part of the equation, not the entire solution. And honestly, I think that's a healthier framework.
Agreed. It's saying, yes, young people have incredible potential and energy, but they need the right environment, education, and support to flourish.
Which bring us back to whether this idea is still true today. But we'll save that for our next segment.
So, to recap, Rizal never said ang kabataan ang pag-asa ng bayan. But his actual writings about youth are even more challenging and inspiring.
He called for educated, principled young people who would actively work for change, not just youth who are praised for being young.
Coming up next, we'll compare the youth of Rizal's time with Filipino youth today. Don't go anywhere. All right. So we've established what Rizal actually believed about youth. Now, let's do a reality check. How different were young Filipinos in the 1880s compared to today?
Oh man, it's like comparing two different planets, but also, some things are eerily similar.
Right? That's what fascinates me. So, let's start with the obvious. In Rizal's time, if you were a young Filipino getting an education, you were part of an extremely privileged minority.
We're talking about maybe 1 to 2% of population having access to any formal education beyond basic literacy. And if you were studying abroad like Rizal, you're basically a unicorn.
Today, we have what? Around 90% literacy rate? Millions of Filipinos going to college. The landscape has completely transformed.
But here's the catch. Accent doesn't always equal quality. And that's where things get interesting.
Let's dig into this education piece because it's central to everything. In Rizal's era, education was tightly controlled by the Spanish friars.
Right? And it was designed to keep Filipinos compliant. You learn Spanish, Catholic doctrine, and maybe some basic arithmetic. The whole system was about creating loyal colonial subjects, not critical thinkers.
Which is exactly why ilustrados like Rizal had to go to Europe to get real education. The Philippines didn't have universities that would teach them medicine, law, or philosophy at an advanced level. Or if they did, Filipinos were discriminated against.
Fast forward today, we got thousands of schools, universities in every region, online learning platforms also.
But, and this is a big but, we're still struggling with education quality. The PISA rankings, literacy comprehension duties, studies, employability gaps.
Exactly. We've democratized access, but we have democratized quality. A student in Metro Manila has vastly different opportunities than someone in a remote barangay in Mindanao.
So, in Rizal's time, the barrier was access. Today, the barrier is inequality within access.
And here's something Rizal would probably find frustrating. We're still dealing with colonial mentality in education. How much of our curriculum still centers Western perspectives? How many Filipino youth still think they need to go abroad to get a real education?
That hits hard. Rizal went to Europe because he had no choice. We go there because we think it's inherently better.
Okay, let's talk about what young people were fighting against. In the 1880s and 1890s, it was crystal clear: Spanish colonial rule, friar abuses, and racial discrimination.
The enemy was visible. Rizal and his contemporaries couldn't point at specific injustices. Filipinos couldn't hold high government positions. They were taxed unfairly. They could be arrested without cause.
Today's oppression is more nebulous. Like, we have political independence, but
But we've got corruption, political dynasties, economic inequality, and what some call neo-colonialism, where we're still dependent on foreign powers economically and culturally.
and this is where it gets tricky for today's youth. How do you fight an enemy that's not as clearly defined? How do you resist when the system is supposed to be yours, but it still doesn't work for you?
Right? In Rizal's time, if you were a young activist, you joined the propaganda movement. You wrote for La Solidaridad. You pushed for reforms. The path was dangerous but clear.
Today, you've got youth activism happening on multiple fronts: climate change, human rights, education reform, and social justice. But there's also this weird paradox where young people are both more connected globally and more fragmented locally.
Social media activism, the slacktivism debate.
Exactly. You can tweet about injustice, join online movements, sign petitions, but does it translate to real change? In Rizal's time, writing one essay could get you exiled. Today, you can write 1,000 tweets, and what happens?
Although, to be fair, we've also seen social media mobilize massive movements like EDSA Tres, the Million People March, Youth Climate Strikes.
True. The tools have changed, but the question remains: are today's youth as willing to sacrifice and take risks as Rizal generation was?
Let's talk about something that I think connects both eras: migration and the brain drain.
Oh, this is crucial. Rizal and the Ilustrados left the Philippines to get educated. with the intention of coming back and uplifting the nation.
Key phrase, intention of coming back. Most of them did. Rizal could have stayed in Europe, lived comfortably as a doctor, but he came home, knowing it was dangerous.
Today, we're losing thousands of our best and brightest every year. Nurses, engineers, teachers, IT professionals. They leave and may never come back.
And can you blame them? If you're a young nurse, you can earn maybe 20,000 pesos a month here, or you can earn 200,000 in the Middle East or Europe. The math is brutal.
It's not even about luxury. It's about survival. But being able to support your family. The Philippine economy hasn't created enough high-quality opportunities for our educated youth.
So we invest in educating our young people, and then we export them. We're like a training ground for the world's workforce.
And this is where I think the Pag-asa ng Bayan narrative gets complicated. Are we blaming youth for leaving? Or should we be asking why the nation isn't giving them a reason to stay?
Rizal's generation faced exile as punishment. Today's generation chooses exile as survival strategy.
Wow. That's a powerful way to put it.
But here's a glimmer of hope. We're also seeing young Filipinos who stay or who return and build social enterprises, start advocacy organizations, create innovative solutions to local problems.
The thinking machines. The Gawad Kalinga youth volunteers. Young politicians who aren't from dynasties. Social entrepreneurs.
They're there. The question is, are they the exception or could they become the norm?
So, to sum up, youth in Rizal's time had limited access but perhaps clearer purposes. Today's youth have unprecedented access but face far more complex, systematic change.
Both generations face the question, what are you willing to sacrifice for the nation? But the nature of that sacrifice has changed dramatically.
The tools are different, the obstacles are different. But the core question remains, can the youth truly be the hope of the nation?
And more importantly, is it fair to expect them to be? We'll tackle that in our final segment.
Stay with us.
All right, here we are. The million peso equation. The million peso question. Are today's Filipino youth actually living up to being the pag-asa ng bayan?
You know what? I think we're asking the wrong question.
Oh, here we go. Enlighten me.
It shouldn't be, are youth living up to the hope? It should be, is the nation living up to its youth?
Okay, okay. I see where you're going. But let's look at both sides. Because the truth is, there are incredible young Filipinos doing amazing things right now.
Absolutely. And there are also systematic barriers that would make even Rizal him struggle. Let's break it down.
Let's start with the success stories because they deserve recognition. You've got young Filipinos making waves in literally every field.
In science and tech, I'm thinking about those Filipino students who keep winning international robotics competitions, science Olympiads. We've got young developers creating apps that solve local problems.
Like the students who built apps for disaster response or platforms connecting farmers directly to markets. These aren't just school projects, they're real solutions.
And in activism, the youth led climate strikes, the mobilization during the pandemic to help communities, the fact checking volunteers fighting disinformation.
Don't forget the art. Young Filipino filmmakers winning at international festivals, musicians going viral globally, writers publishing at 20, visual artists whose work is being exhibited worldwide.
There's also community level heroism that doesn't make headlines. Young teacher choosing to work in there's underserved areas, youth volunteers doing medical missions, college students tutoring street children.
I met this group of young people in Quezon City who started a community library in their barangay using donated books. They're there every weekend teaching kids to read.
See, that's the thing. When you actually look, you find young Filipinos everywhere trying to make a difference. They're not waiting for permission or for perfect condition.
So by that measure, yes, the youth are living up to the hope. They're being creative, resilient, and solutions oriented.
But, and here comes the big but,
But these success stories exist despite the system, not because of it.
exactly. Let's talk numbers. Youth unemployment in the Philippines consistently runs higher than the national average. Even before the pandemic, it was around 13 to 14%. During COVID, it spiked to over 30%.
And this is educated youth we're talking about, college graduates who can't find jobs that match their qualifications, or any jobs at all.
The skills mismatch is real. Our education system is producing graduates, but not necessarily for the jobs that exist in our economy.
Then there's underemployment, young people working part-time, contractual, or in jobs way below their skill level just to survive. How can you be the hope of the nation when you're worried about your next meal?
And look, let's talk about mental health. Filipino youth today are dealing with unprecedented levels of anxiety and depression. The pandemic made it worse, but issues were there before: academic pressure, family expectation, and economic stress.
Social media plays a role too. You're constantly comparing yourself to everyone else's highlight reel while dealing with your own struggles privately.
Plus, the political disillusionment. Many young people feel their votes don't matter, that the system is rigged. The real change is impossible.
I've heard young people say, why bother? And I get it. When you see the same political dynasties, the same corruption patterns, the same broken promises, what's the incentive to engage?
Here's what really gets me. We tell youth they're the hope of the nation, but we don't give them seats at the table. How many young Filipino are in Congress, in local government, making policy decisions?
We want them to be leaders, but we don't actually let them lead until they're not young anymore.
It's like telling someone they're training to be an Olympic athlete, but never letting them compete.
So, here's what bothers me about the whole Kabataan ang Pag-asa narrative. It puts the entire it puts the entire burden of national progress on young people's shoulders.
While ignoring that adults, the one actually in power, created the mess in the first place.
Right? Like we've failed to build a strong economy. We allowed corruption to thrive. We didn't fix education. We destroyed the environment. But yeah, you kids figure it out.
It's generational passing of the buck. And it's not unfair, it's unrealistic.
Youth can't fix systematic poverty when economic policies favor the elite. They can't reform education when budgets are slashed. They can't fight climate change when corporations keep polluting.
This is why I said earlier, we're asking the wrong question. Instead of, are youth living up to the hope? Maybe we should ask, are we giving the youth the tools, opportunities, and the support they need?
What would that actually look like?
Quality education that's accessible to everyone, not just those who can afford it. Job creation that matches the skills we're teaching, mental health support, political representation, investment in youth programs.
Basically, stop treating youth as future leaders and start treating them as current stakeholders.
Yes, and here's the thing. When given the chance, Filipino youth consistently step up. Look at any crisis and you'll see young volunteers. Look at any innovation hub and you'll see young entrepreneurs.
So they're not failing the nation. The question is whether the nation is failing them.
Though, I think we also need to be careful not to romanticize the struggle. Not every young Filipino needs to be a hero or a change maker. Some just want to live decent lives, have stable jobs, and support their families.
And that should be okay. You shouldn't have to be extraordinary just to survive.
Exactly. The baseline shouldn't be overcome impossible odds. It should be thrive in a supportive environment.
So, final verdict. Are today's Filipino youth the hope of the nation?
They have the potential, they have the drive, and many are already doing incredible work. But they can't do it alone.
The real question is, will we, as nation, be worthy of their hope? Will we create the conditions where they can actually flourish?
Because Rizal didn't just say, youth are the hope, and walk away. He spent his life fighting for systematic change. Maybe we need to do the same.
That's it for today's episode. Thank you for listening. And remember, whether you're part of the youth or not, we all have a role to play.
Ang bayan, pag-asa ng kabataan. The nation must be the hope of its youth too.